Hey everyone, welcome back to Political X. For more knowledge and updates on UK, European and US politics, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So there's a lot to pick up from question time this week, and Brian Cox's comments were quite interesting. Definitely grabbed the crowd, got a few rounds of applause, so I thought I'd just go into detail about two of the points that he made. Just have a listen to the Conservative MP for Scotland talking about his stance in relation to COVID. I've also added in a few highlights from other Conservative MPs talking about masks and COVID. I've also included some points from doctors about masks and COVID. And it's really interesting to see that the Conservatives seem to think that the vaccine solves all the problems. Whereas when you actually listen to some of the experts, they're saying, no, the vaccine is really good and helpful, but we need more. And I find it really interesting as well when you look over into Asia once again, which the Conservatives seem to continually ignore. Mask wearing is the norm. Whereas here they've decided that once you've had the vaccine, it's not necessary. Anyway, let's have a listen to the Conservative MP.
People have been critical of the government benches for Conservative Party members of Parliament dominantly for not wearing masks. I would suggest that over the summer and the first weeks of autumn, the situation looked very different.
There is clearly a level of complacency within the Conservative Party over this, and this is why they haven't encouraged the use of masks, and they're willing to have 100 people a day die. It's criminal. It's disturbing. And it continues. It's almost like they haven't learned from the mistakes that they made at the beginning of the pandemic. It's constant complacency. And what you'll see is that they're obsessed with the idea of the vaccine being the solution to this, and it clearly isn't. The fact that it can wear off after 5 to 6 months is a major problem and concern.
Out there. But as Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, said yesterday, we've got to recognise that we have a responsibility to set the tone and to set an example. And so I was encouraged today when I saw the television that a lot more of my colleagues were wearing masks in the Commons. I certainly will be now, given the numbers that we're seeing, because I think we do have an example to lead this country and to demonstrate that taking sensible small steps, like wearing masks in crowded places, can have a big difference. But the biggest difference is getting the vaccine and getting the booster if you're able.
So there's a couple of things with what he just said there to unpack. Masks are just as important. We've seen that in Europe and Asia, and once again they're ignoring what the Asians are doing. There seems to be some sort of level of racism towards Asia, which I don't understand. They were clearly ahead of the game when it came to dealing with COVID. Australia and New Zealand took on board their ideas, and we just refused to. There is some level of bigotry going on there. There is also an issue over the vaccines, which I discovered to my absolute horror this week. If you want a flu shot, which I personally need to get around this time, September, October, in order to make sure I don't have a chest infection, for example, you now have to pay. I then asked what the reason is for this, and it's because, again, there's a shortage. Brexit, once again, is causing further problems with this. On top of that, if you're on universal credit, you do not get free flu shots, even if in the previous years you've required them and been given them around September, October. Going back to the point on masks, let's just have a listen to some experts who are being interviewed on Good Morning Britain about this topic of what's going wrong with the UK.
But why do we have a much bigger problem here than, say, in France? What are we doing wrong?
I mean, I think you'll be surprised to hear that it's not as straightforward answer, but there are a few factors that seem to be playing a part. One is the fact that there is a lot more indoor mixing in large groups in crowded settings going on in the UK at the moment than in those other countries. Now, part of that is simply because the weather, as we well know, is not as nice here. It's colder, it's damper. There's obviously more of us spending time indoors. And there's also, in some countries at least, some slight differences in masking policy. But then there are other factors as well, such as this idea of waning immunity. So the longer the amount of time that has passed since someone has received their second dose, you start to see that slight drop off in the amount of protection given by the vaccine. And
That's
the simple fact is
because we
well, I think it's a combination of things. I think the first thing to say about this is that the vaccines are actually not a tool that can be relied upon all by themselves to control spread of infection. So these vaccines are very good at stopping people from getting sick and ending up in hospital, but they're not so efficient at stopping people getting the infection altogether and passing it on to other people.
But the biggest difference is getting the vaccine and getting the booster if you're able.
They'll do it to some extent, but if we try to rely on the vaccine program on its own to keep things under control, we will see this problem getting worse.
No, you're right.
And we are seeing it get worse, and the Tories aren't leading by example. Let's have a listen to the leader of the House, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on his perception on mask wearing.
As regards mask wearing, I really responded to the shadow leader. I would say there's no advice to wear face masks in workplaces, and the advice on crowded spaces is with crowded spaces with people that you don't know. We on this side know each other.
And again, they don't learn from the past. So if you recall, there was a super spreader event in the Rose Garden under Donald Trump, where not only Donald Trump got infected, and this is outside with people, some wearing masks, but the majority not wearing masks. And it spread from Trump to Melania, to House staffers, to senators, to campaign aides, to journalists, military aides, other guests. They all knew each other. But it's fine because Jacob Rees-Mogg said,
as regards mask wearing, I really responded to the shadow leader. I would say there's no advice to wear face masks in workplaces, and the advice on crowded spaces is with crowded spaces with people that you don't know. We on this side know each other.
Except the CDC, immediately after the Rose Garden event, came out and said this.
The CDC updated their website saying that 6 feet might not be enough distance to stay safe from the virus anymore. Their website now stating that, in quotes, some infections can be spread by exposure to a virus in small droplets and particles that can linger in the air for about minutes to hours. These viruses may be able to infect people who are further than 6 feet away from the person who is infected or after that person has left the space. And the doctor I spoke with today, he says, regardless of really any distance, the most important thing that we can do to slow the spread of this virus is to, of course, keep wearing those masks.
Keep wearing those masks. All right, Katya, thank you.
So I appreciate it banged on a bit. Let's have a listen to Brian Cox's take on this, because that's the point of the video.
So Brian, the UK recorded more than 50,000 COVID infections today. That's for the first time since July. The question is, should governments reimpose more restrictions? What's your view?
I think it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. I think the left hand doesn't really know what the right hand's doing on this. And clearly, I love the idea of normal life. And we aren't living a normal life. What is normal life? It's certainly not like that at the moment, and it's not going to be like that, whatever that may mean, eventually. But I feel that we do need to be vaccinated. We do need to be responsible. I think Scotland, I have to say, is a very good example of what's going on. I think in the south, there's a lot of headless chicken activity, quite frankly. And it's interesting that the Conservative Party are finally catching up, and now they're all wearing masks. But they should have been wearing masks all the time as an example. And it's the example that's important for the people. That's what Parliament's supposed to do. They're supposed to represent the people and the needs of the people. And so the masks are terribly important. They really are. I've had COVID. I know what it's like. In fact, in my case, it wasn't too bad. But at the same time, I just feel that we are a bit lax, and we don't quite know what we want to do, what we're supposed to do. And I think we just have to be a little stringent in our whole policy on masks, particularly.
OK, lots of hands up. Listen.
Just have a look at the reactions from this MP. They're so arrogant. Rolling of the eyes every time Brian Cox speaks. It's actually quite pathetic. And this is in the space of about 2 minutes. Just like, doesn't know what he's talking about. It's really disgusting. Really disgusting. And part of the reason for me saying that is simply because they presided over one of the largest deaths anywhere in the world and in Western Europe. They've not learned from their mistakes. And when they're being given information, if they don't like it, they'll just roll their eyes at you. As if you're the crazy one, when they're the one that's caused over 160,000 deaths. And you can include the excess deaths, which they're currently being sued for. Anyway, if you're enjoying my videos so far, if you're enjoying all the work that I'm producing at the moment, please consider becoming a patron. Please click the subscribe button, the notification button, the like button. All this helps with growing the channel and is really appreciated.
Now, it may be that the honourable gentleman doesn't like mixing with his own side. He may want to keep himself in his personal bubble. He may find the other members of the SNP, who I normally find extraordinarily charming, but he may not take this Catholic view of his other honourable and right honourable members, and I sympathise if that is the case, but we on this side have a more convivial, fraternal spirit, and therefore are following the guidance of Her Majesty's government.
The reason I've shown that clip is because of what took place with the environment debate, but also because what's been taking place this week with the nasty remarks that have been spread around by the Conservatives, whilst also claiming that no one should be spreading nasty remarks about them. I've just thrown in a clip where Jacob Rees-Mogg this week has thrown 4 punches at the opposition after a member of the Conservative Party, an MP of Parliament, has just died. And one of the things everyone's clambering for is a calm in what's taking place with the aggression between both sides and a de-escalation. Yet Jacob Rees-Mogg just threw out 4 snidey, passive-aggressive comments. Now Brian Coxs comes up with his own perspective on this. Let's just have a listen to both sides throw some jabs, and then we'll listen to Brian Cox's response.
A lot of jaws dropped in the North-East, whether or not they support me and my party. There was a lot of surprise. Now, opportunities
but what about in terms of the domestic oil industry? If you've got a legally binding target, which you have, to achieve net zero emissions by 2045, when do you envisage phasing out the domestic oil industry?
Yeah, so this is my point, that with a just transition, there are opportunities to create new jobs when it comes to that phasing out. And the carbon capture and storage in the North-East is a great example. You've got the infrastructure there from the oil and gas industry. You've got the skills there. You've got a lot of the investment there. Now, if you take that and redeploy that through something like carbon capture and storage with the investment behind it, but the key is you need the investment behind it, then you're creating jobs as we make that just transition.
And your partners in government, the Green Party, are against investment in any carbon capture and storage. And your leader, Nicola Sturgeon, is unable to say whether she supports further exploration and drilling in the North Sea.
Andrew, a few months ago...
And we have seen the dangers of not having a domestic supply.
A few months ago, you stood up in the House of Commons talking about the benefits of the North East Initiative and project.
Absolutely.
This week, the UK government chose to bypass the most advanced and cost-effective carbon capture and storage opportunity in the UK, which is in the North East. So the North East economy has contributed over £350 billion of oil revenues over the last few decades. All it would have taken is £1 billion to contribute, to donate, to invest in the North East to ensure that we do see that just transition from oil and gas to new economic opportunities, and that did not happen.
So, Kate, it's the Conservative government in London that is investing £16 billion in the transition fund to move us into this new renewables future. Yes, in the northeast of Scotland. We've invested in the Oil and Gas Technology Centre in Aberdeen, the subsea hub of excellence, which is going to be created in my constituency. £2.3 billion of tax relief for companies operating out of Aberdeen to make the North Sea the most attractive basin in which to invest in the world. And in terms of carbon capture and storage and the Scottish cluster and the Acorn project, of course, it was disappointing that it didn't achieve Tier 1 status, but it is a reserve cluster. It does mean that it still remains in the programme, and the UK government spent £31 million already working with the Scottish cluster, and I hope that we can advance the timeframe, because we're going to need much more than the 2 Tier 1 projects if we're going to be serious about developing this technology, and I remain committed to working with the UK government and with the Scottish cluster to advance it more in the future, because the Conservative Party is investing and does care about the North East of Scotland, unlike the Scottish National Party government in Edinburgh.
Brian.
Oh, sorry.
Joseph, I guess you're looking skyward.
This is not a party political issue. We're in deep shit. We really are. And we really have to face up to that. I'm sorry. to use the Scottish word, I'm well and truly scunnered, quite frankly. You know, we're in, you know, we've just had this report coming out just now, which has just been released today, about the investigation that they found out that both the South America and Australia and Saudi Arabia want to circumvent what's going on. And the planet is being destroyed, and we have to rethink it. We have to make certain sacrifice in order to get better. And we still want to fall into, well, we can't afford that because we'll lose that. But we have to think first and foremost about the planet and our responsibility to the planet. And that's the key.
I mean, the question is about an independent Scotland putting the economy and the environment first.
Well, I think they have to put the environment first. I mean, I really do. I think that's the advantage that we can... I mean, we're a small country, and we could show example. Now, the Saudis are not going to do it. Australia's not going to give up their coal that easily. And we can do that. The great thing about our country is we are the particular, and we're small, and we can actually we can make those sacrifices, because ultimately we could afford it.
So phasing out the oil industry.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed my political observations this week. If you'd like to support me, please share the video with others and post about it on social media. If you're keen for more, subscribe, comment, like, and hit that notification button. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on Political X.